Hey, listeners, and welcome to the You Are Epic podcast. This is where we honour the people who've helped build not just our industry, but our communities. I'm Angela Hucker, and I am so glad that you're here. So, I'm taking the time to sit down with people who've been in construction for years, people who've been through the ups, the downs, and everything in between. You're going to hear real stories of resilience, growth, and moments that shaped who they are. This podcast is for those that want to learn more from people who've been walking this path for some time, and they're helping to lift up others and quietly making a difference along the way. It's also to show you that your journey matters and your voice matters. And in case you've forgotten, you are epic. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Greg Douglas, a seasoned leader in the electrical infrastructure space, with a career spanning nearly 2 decades across high voltage networks, major civil projects, and transmission line delivery. Greg started out as an electrical designer with PowerCore Australia and quickly moved into project management, building his expertise across both rural and urban networks. Since then, he's taken on senior roles across Victoria and New South Wales, delivering complex electrical works for clients like Transgrid, Ausgrid, Essential Energy, and Endeavour Energy. Now serving as a program manager for transmission lines at Zinfra, Greg oversees large-scale projects across the AusNet and Transgrid networks, managing everything from budgeting and crew resourcing to environmental compliance and workplace health and safety leadership. He brings deep technical knowledge, really sharp project delivery skills, and a calm, people-first leadership style. What stands out about Greg is his commitment to creating high-performing teams, building trust with clients, and driving real, measurable outcomes, not just for the project, but for the culture behind it. So welcome. We've got Greg Douglas here with us today, who works in the transmission industry and is a guru with lots of experience working in the transmission industry. So it's awesome to have you here today with us, Greg. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thanks, Ange. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So what we might do, Greg, just to get started is if you just wouldn't mind sharing with us about, how long you've been working in the industry, how did you actually get started, and what your current role is?
So I've been in the industry since 2003. I started as a design trainee with PowerCore in Victoria, doing some distribution design. So since then, I spent a number of years at PowerCore and then moved to New South Wales and started working in contracting, project manager. Started, again, predominantly doing distribution and some sub-transmission works, and then moved into a transmission role in around 2016. That was my first introduction to transmission on a project at Broken Hill for a wind farm. So that was a fairly dramatic introduction to the transmission scene, and I've worked on a number of projects throughout New South Wales predominantly, also projects in Queensland and Victoria since then, since I've been with Zinfra. My current role now, I'm a project director with Zinfra in the New South Wales business for transmission, and we work with sort of our key clients of Transgrid and PowerLink, also Evo Energy in our areas.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Like, I've done a couple of transmission projects myself, so I know they're very intense and complex projects to work on as well, because you're obviously going along, you're building lines along hundreds of kilometers of land and stuff as well. So with what you've seen with being in the industry and everything, like some of the projects that you've been on, what's sort of some of those challenging environments that you've encountered in your time?
With transmission lines, there's obviously a lot of challenges. And, if I go back to my first project at Broken Hill, the intent was to start there as a project engineer. And on the day that I started with the company, the project manager for that project was supposed to start as well. And he, for whatever reason, didn't turn up. And by the end of the day, I'd moved from being a project engineer to a project manager on my first transmission project. So it was certainly a crash course there. It was my first FIFO project as well. So there was a lot to take in a remote area at Broken Hill with a new team. Yeah, a lot of challenges there to sort of deal with so many issues, the logistics of FIFO, the remoteness of the work. Myself dealing with first FIFO, I'd always sort of typically been at home, and that was a new thing. So to have that sort of responsibility, it certainly was a heightened responsibility and a very difficult project, I guess, as all projects are now, like very constrained timeframes, an end date that never moves despite what happens along the way. So there was A lot of challenges. I was probably fortunate there that I had good support from within the organisation I was with, from both the experienced construction managers on site, quite an experienced crew as well, and good support from within the business. But yeah, it was certainly a steep learning curve.
Very steep learning curve, and then especially being thrown into a FIFO environment as well. So that's another level of construction most people don't get to
Yeah, yeah.
experience. There's a lot of complexities that go with that in itself. So what kind of strategies did you put in place for yourself to be able to help yourself in those environments and with that steep learning curve that you had?
I'll talk to the FIFO first. So for the time that I did FIFO work, one thing that I found was really good was I'd worked in project management and also in construction management roles whilst in FIFO, doing FIFO work. It is demanding, and when you're on site there, like, it's your life. You're in at work very early. There's long hours. When if there's an issue, then you have to stay and sort it out, because you've got, as I said, an end date that rarely moves. A lot of people are on site, and so the daily cost of work is very high with all of the people that you have on site, people and plant, and particularly in remote areas. So it's very demanding and very stressful. And I think probably as I look back, the things that have helped me through was, again, the team that you work with. If you've got a good team around you, then really does make everything much more manageable. There's someone there who can step in and solve a problem if you've got a problem, and if everyone works together, then those problems are overcome a lot better than and I guess I have experienced as well teams that don't work so well, and it is a lot more difficult in that sense. So that's very important for me personally. I tried as much as I could to have sort of a hard stop at the end of the day, so to go to the gym or something like that at the end of the day, so that whatever time it was, 6 o'clock, 6:30, you'd say, okay, well, I've got to leave now, I'm going to go and do this. And that was just a good way to sort of decompress. I think after a solid day, you go and sort of just work out all of that built up angst that you've experienced throughout the day, and it is just gives you that opportunity then to step away from it all and just calm down a little bit before you go to bed and take stock and be ready to get back into it the next day.
So it's kind of like having those boundaries where you're like, I know I need to do this because that will support me to be able to
yeah, absolutely,
tomorrow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't always happen that way, but as much as I could, that's what I did, and something I certainly encouraged everyone in the team to do that as well. And I think one thing that I sort of have said regularly to our team members is that there's going to be times when you're on site and something's going to happen. So there's probably going to be a bit of an expectation that you will be there later into the night. But by the same token, if things are up to date and going well, then I'm expecting that you'll take off early to go and go for a swim or a hike or whatever it is that you do to sort of get that normality back in your life. Yeah, so I was sort of always a big advocate of that.
So it's kind of like that give and take, that that when it's needed, people will give that extra effort. Like if you've got a concrete pour late, for example, or something's running over, or you've got to get ready for a concrete pour at 6 o'clock next morning or something. But then when there's a bit of a lull, that it's like, okay, well, you can take a bit of time and have some time for yourself as well.
Yep.
So
yeah, definitely. And I think that's that sort of acknowledgement for people for the work that they do, because people based on site do it is big hours. One of the attractions of FIFO work is the money that you're able to make. You get additional allowances, uplifts, that sort of stuff, and paid to live away. So financially, the rewards are there, but it is very demanding. And I think that we need to give people that acknowledgement over and above that. They do work very hard, and there's a lot of expectation there.
Yeah, and so as moving up into obviously a project manager and then now a project director and stuff, you touched on before about having good teams and stuff. What do you see is beneficial in being able to build those good teams? What sort of skills do, like the project managers, the construction managers, those sort of mid-level managers need to be able to build those good teams so people are working cohesively?
Management is about people, isn't it? As project managers, there's a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of meetings and a lot of commercial issues that you deal with, and that's obviously all very important. But for me, as to whether or not your project is going to succeed is the people you've got there working with you. And as I said before, like I had the benefit of good people when I started, and that certainly helped me achieve some good results along the way. So the key is to look after your people, particularly now. Our industry is going through sort of unprecedented times, I guess, in terms of the projects that are available and on the horizon now. And we've sort of seen over the last couple of years, there's a lot of demand for for those skilled resources, construction managers. Well, I guess from the ground up, isn't it? From field resources,
Yeah.
supervisors, and everyone who's involved with the project. There's just high demand now, and with the projects on the horizon, it looks like those demands will only increase. So again, money can go so far to attracting people, but I think if you want to keep those people, you've really got to continue to look after them and acknowledge their performance, and give them those those little wins along the way, and just make them feel as though the work that they're doing is recognised and appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's beneficial because then people are feeling valued and they're feeling appreciated, and then they're
Yeah,
going to want to stay and contribute and do a good job and everything as well, and not be like, oh, I've just got to get to the next project because I've had enough of this place. I'm being treated like shit. So
that's right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And and I think you'll find that people will stay even if there is other offers on the table that might be superior to what they're getting now. If they're in a good work environment where they're happy to go to work, and again, getting to the FIFO thing, like you on a roster in transmission, it's normally around sort of 3 weeks on and 1 week off. So you're spending 75% of your life at work with these same people. So if you can create a good environment there, then people will want to stay because it is such a huge part of their life.
And so with where the industry is at now, with obviously you touched on about trying to get people at all levels, like it's not just tradespeople or, skilled labor and stuff. It's actually people at all levels because you need the rest to be able to support the others. What kind of barriers are you seeing with that, of what may be limiting people or preventing people from actually wanting to step into this industry?
I think what we are seeing now is that there's probably just a small pool of those experienced people around. With the industry just sort of tinkered along for such a long time, and then had this dramatic growth in the number of big projects. We've been able to, across the industry, get the labour for those by looking overseas, and we've done that at Zimfer, and a lot of companies have. So that's the labour component, but it is difficult with those leadership roles of supervisors and construction managers to find the degree of expertise that we had. The solutions are probably not that easy. There's got to be that sort of mentoring process of those people that we identify as having that potential. It's probably almost a bit of a fast track process to get some of those people up through mentoring and training, but some of those roles take time and exposure to different projects and different ways of doing things. And any sort of fast track that you put people on, they're not going to benefit as much as if they'd had the luxury of time.
Yeah, for me, from what I've seen in the time, there hasn't actually been a great deal of that succession planning that's being done in the industry. And I'm not sure if you've experienced that in your time as well, particularly with you moving from engineer and then straight into a project manager's role on your first FIFO project. And now obviously moving up to project director. Are you seeing that, like that succession planning isn't really happening, of how to actually step people through?
Yeah, it's something that probably hasn't happened a great deal in the past, but it's front and centre now. The industry was quite stable there for a long time, and has undergone sort of significant growth. So it is very something that's a focus for us, and I would assume across the board now, of trying to find the right people to step into those roles. And again, as I said, we've got a high proportion of our workforce, or our new workforce, is coming from overseas, and the people that are coming from overseas don't always have the same depth of experience and the same background and the same sort of leadership traits that we would be probably looking for. So it's not going to be an easy fix.
And so what are some of those traits that you're looking for in a leader?
Well, I think it's about people, isn't it? Someone who can organise themselves and their people, but do it in a way where it's collaborative and emphasising that teamwork within crews and project teams as a whole. And look, as you know, if you can get everyone sort of working towards the same goals, and that's when you're going to achieve your best results. And that's for everyone from crew leader, whether you're a crew leader of 4 people or 5 people, or a supervisor of 20 or a construction manager of 50. That's the same sort of philosophy applies, just to different extents, and trying to get that sort of good working relationship with everyone, acknowledge when they've done well, guide them when they've not done so well, but just sort of keep that positive relationship going is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on at the start of the conversation about how you had really good support when you stepped into that first role with the project manager on your FIFO project at Broken Hill. How important do you see that having the right sort of support around you? And it's not just the right team, but the right support when you're kind of in those positions. How important do you see that being for people to actually, be set up for success as well so they can thrive and not be this churn and burn and people leaving?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's critical, isn't it? And that's probably just not exclusive to our industry and to FIFO work. In that first project that I was on, that I was up against challenges that I'd never faced before, and so didn't really have that experience behind me to recognise how to address it. And so that's where other project managers and even people above that who did have that experience in the past were able to sort of give me that guidance when I needed it. It's very important, no matter how much experience you have and how many years you worked in a particular role, there's always the opportunity to learn. There's always going to be something that you may not have encountered that someone else had. So it's critical to have someone to lean on, even if it's just a quick chat over the phone and just, sometimes you can solve your problems there, or sometimes it needs to be a bit more in depth. But yeah, from a business point of view, to provide, that sort of support to all of your workers at all levels is very important.
And so is Zinfra doing anything in that space of providing that kind of support? I would call it peer support myself, but providing that support for the workers and the leaders and the upcoming leaders as well. Are they doing anything in that space particularly?
Yeah, we do. We have put some of our junior leaders through leadership training, and we're always looking for new avenues there. Some of the training, again, it's what we do is quite specific, so an off-the-shelf course doesn't always fit. So we're always looking for new opportunities, looking at internal training that we can deliver. That's to our junior leaders and field staff, and there is training available to more senior staff, and we encourage people, if they want to pursue sort of tertiary studies, to do that as well. But there is also a mentoring program. That we're quite a diverse business, so people from other parts of the business do interact with people on projects, and people on projects interact with people. We've got a gas business and some other parts of the business. So to get that sort of diversity within the interactions is very helpful as well.
Awesome. No, I love that, because we definitely need more of that to be able to help people just, give them the skills and tools and, everything, that the strategies that to help them succeed basically and set them up for success. Yeah. So what I'd really love to talk about is your FIFO experience, because, we're both ex-FIFO workers, and it's not an easy environment to be in. So I'd like to just sort of understand how many years you actually were doing FIFO for, and, being in the camp environments and living with the people, like, it's kind of a bit of a boiling pot in itself outside of construction as well. And I'm just curious, probably let's understand how long you did FIFO for and what sort of things that you saw was like a common theme of the complexities of being a FIFO worker as well.
I came into FIFO quite late, so I only did FIFO for 6 or 7 years. I was also I'm going to say fortunate that I didn't live in camp, so all of my FIFO was on had a living away allowance and organised my own accommodation, which that was my preference. I did have a camp for a short period of time, and then I moved out, because again, as what I found as the project manager is, you sit down to eat your cornflakes for breakfast, and people sit at the table, and the common interest you've got is work, and so they just want to talk about work and how about we do this, and we should be doing this better, and I'm just thinking, I'm happy to have this conversation, but right now I just want to eat my breakfast. So I moved away from that, and so I've not experienced camp, so I probably can't speak too much to that. Realistically, that's by choice. For me personally, again, I came into FIFO work older than most, perhaps, and a little bit set in my ways, and for me personally, knew that I wouldn't probably enjoy that environment. But look, some people do, and I think a lot of the camps now offer very good conditions and a lot of opportunities to exercise and be entertained. But that was just not something that I wanted to pursue.
Yeah, and I understand, like, even with the LAHA and stuff, with the living away from home, like, they both have their different things that go with it. And I've done both. I've been camp and I've done the LAHA as well.
Yeah.
But I know, like, with the LAHA, I mean, the thing with that, you can cook your own meals, you can eat what you want, you can, you got a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah.
But then it's like you've just worked 12 or 14 hours and you've got to cook your meals. And,
Yes.
like
Yes.
you're not going where dinner's already cooked and you can just grab it.
Yeah.
And when, breakfast and lunches, your cribs are ready for you. Like you've actually got to prepare it. So
Yep.
for me, that was like another level as well. When you got the laha, it's like, oh, you've actually still got to prepare all this food for the week as well and make sure you get
Yeah.
fed.
Yeah, that's right. That's definitely a consideration there. And I know that some of our people did go and work on a project that had a camp for a while, and that was what exactly one of the things they said. That was just nice to finish work, and all they had to do then was walk in and eat their meal and have a shower, and they could go to bed without all of the other chores that they had to do whilst they're
Yeah,
on Taha. So yeah, it is another level. And one of the considerations for Taha in general, and when I've been interviewing people who haven't done, sorry, FIFO, not Taha, when people are moving into FIFO for the first time, the obvious question comes up and saying, okay, well, you're going to be away for 3 weeks at a time. Is that okay? And inevitably the answer is yes, yes, I'll be fine. And I said, well, what about your family? Like, I said, it's for the people on FIFO, it's almost easier than it is for the family, because if you've got a
yeah,
wife and kids or a husband and kids or dependents at home, I said, like if you could be 1,000 kilometers away and the fridge breaks down or the
yeah,
pipe bursts or just something happens, and whoever is at home as part of your family base, they've got to deal with that, whilst also dealing with all of the household issues that go on. So I think that's for people who are moving into FIFO work, that's probably a pretty big consideration. And I think, and look, I don't know the figures, but obviously, it does put a big strain on your relationship as well. One of the issues is when people go home on their week off for their FIFO or their time off, they're looking to decompress and de-stress after a busy period. And but they walk into a household where life's just going on. Like so it does, there can be that sort of conflict from time to time about how you manage your life at home is, well, more important, I guess, to a degree than how you manage your life whilst you're on a swing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, like, particularly with a lot of the people that I've worked with, like, they come home and they kind of have felt like they're the stranger because life has been going on for the time they've been away.
Yeah,
And they come in and it's kind of like, oh, like they've got the routine down pat. The kids know what's happening, bath times at this time and, beds at this time. And then they come in and it's like, oh, hang on, I'm not actually part of this routine because I haven't been here. And it's
yeah,
quite
yeah.
disruptive for the whole family as well.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would come home and I'd get in trouble for all manner of things that I thought I was doing right. Yeah, just because that's not the way we do it at home. I developed my own sort of habits whilst away. And I guess when I did FIFO work, I didn't have any children at home. So that made things certainly a lot easier for me. But yeah, I can only imagine if there's 2 or 3 kids at home and to step into that environment, it is very difficult. And I think, that's a big consideration for people who want to move into FIFO work. That's something that they, really need to talk through with their family and their friends, because, if you move to FIFO work, you're giving up so much of your life at home, your sports and your interests and your hobbies and your groups and your friends and all of that. It's a massive sacrifice to make. The rewards are there. There's financial rewards. And also for me, going back to the team, like I really enjoy the time that I was doing FIFO work. And even in the face of some very, very difficult periods, when you've got those people around you that you get very close to,
Yeah.
and there's, on transmission line projects, you've obviously got, productivity and subcontractor issues and internal issues with people, and you've got landholder issues and inevitably client issues, weather issues. Often they're all coming at you all at once, and
Yeah.
you've got a lot to deal with. But when you sort of can work through all of those issues and at the end pop out with solving the problems and still getting the work done, like it's a very rewarding environment to work in as well. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of sacrifices to be made.
Yeah, and with that, with the FIFO part, it's being able to kind of help set those people up as well to understand the complexities that it's different to working on a metro project in a Sydney, for example. Like you're not able to just jump in the car and come home.
Yeah.
Like you've got distance that you've got to travel and you're in the middle of a swing or things like that. And, there's all these other things to take into account and what it's going to be like at the end when you're between projects, because sometimes there can, often be a couple months between projects as
Yeah.
well and home. And then that's that readjustment as well. And I mean, I know transmission I've not generally worked on transmission where there's night shift, but I have worked on projects where there's been night shift as well. And then there's all that adjusting with your body clocks and everything as
Mm.
well. What else do you think we could be doing to help our FIFO workers and help set them up for success? Is there any ideas that you've got that the industry could be doing?
I think what we're seeing now from the people doing the work is that they are a bit more focused on work-life balance. If you know, again, if you can call it that, where you're away from your family from a considerable amount of time, and you know, our crews, our transmission crews have moved or shortened their swings so that they've got a little bit more time at home. And but even that's difficult because, again, with a lot of international employees, they very keen to just keep working, but that's got to be balanced against the local employees that are starting to be a bit more conscious of that work-life balance and want shorter swings and want to make sure they get the R&R periods in. It's difficult. I think there's no simple answer when you're away that long. What I also sort of encourage people to do is when they've got days off, I suppose a bit of a habit is to take the day off and just lounge at home. But I guess I also encourage people to say, well, you go into places that you may never have thought of going to, and you may never go again. So again, get out and see it, even if it's just to drive down the road and have lunch, or again getting out and about and going to the lake or going for a hike or things like that. So I think again, if you can probably try and get some semblance of normality into your life, even if it's just for a day in the swing, I think that helps. And also, as I said, I'm a big advocate for trying to find something to do after work on occasions. Again, on long-term projects, for myself personally, you sort of get to know people in the local area, and that's good. And some of them I still keep in touch with. So it does just give you that little bit of normality so that you're not just getting up, going to work, sitting in your room or your house or whatever it is at night, and then just, rinse and repeat for 20 or 21 days. Try and just have that breakup so it's, you've got a little bit of time to interact with people outside of work, enjoy something other than work whilst you're on your swings.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear your ideas about things that could be done to help make the industry a little bit more sustainable so we don't get to this crisis point where we're at now, that we don't have that situation happen again in, like another 10 years, for example, because I know 10 years ago when it was all the gas projects being built and you had all the pipelines and then the transmission lines being built for it, and then you had all the gas projects being built and there was all this resource shortage then as well. But they've changed focus sort of in this decade, where it's actually now enticing more women and migrants and things like that, and bridging that skills gap and everything. So we don't get to this point again in another decade, as an example. What kind of ideas, I'd really love to hear your ideas about what we could do as an industry to help create it so it is more sustainable for the long term, where we're not seeing these issues where we are now.
I think some of that probably comes down to fairly high level strategy, probably sits above certainly me in terms of, having a bit more of a look ahead industry wide about what we're going to need. I guess that's difficult with political cycles, and at the moment with our sort of political parties having very different visions of what the future looks like. But, you can't help but think that as you say, 10 years ago, had we sat and said, okay, well, we're going to need this extra transmission and this extra capacity, and what's the plan for that? If a roadmap could have been executed or outlined then, where there's sort of this gradual build up to allow sort of an incremental build up of people and skills, rather than the lump that we've been dealt with now. For us, I guess for what I see, again, we're probably just in a phase now where we're just upskilling the people that we've got. Again, we've got a diverse workforce that's probably not as skilled as overall and experienced as the workforce we've had in the past. So it'll for us take a little bit of time to get those people to probably the skill level and experience level that we would like to see them at. And then the next phase of that is to start building up our resources with some more, apprentices and trainees and things like that. It's probably for us a little bit hard to predict as a contractor, because we're at the mercy of the projects that we win, and it's certainly very positive looking forward, and I think that we'll be okay. But it's sort of not very often a very linear process, is it, to
No.
growth? It peaks and troughs and roller coasters. I think we'll see more peaks to government and to even the network owners to have a bit more of a look ahead as to what's coming. And that's difficult, again, for everyone, because we don't know as a country what direction we're going to go in. And there's a lot of competing arguments and competing views. So it's pretty difficult to map that out as to how it's going to look.
And the thing is, and you're absolutely correct with that. Like for me, it's kind of like a more of a collaborative approach with everyone, with all the stakeholders involved to
Yeah.
help with planning and not look at things for a term of when a party is in. Like let's actually look at the long-term vision, because if you're
Yeah.
only focused on a 3 or a 4 year term, we all know how long it can take to get a project through the development phase, the approvals phase, the feasibility stage, getting a financier,
Yeah.
all of that. I mean, there's projects that can take, well, one I've worked on and it's, 8 years in and it's still not at construction phase. So, that's
Mm.
kind of two terms of a political party
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And for me, I think for, the likes of Zinfra, who's a subcontractor as well and planning for a workforce, because you can only, as a subcontractor, okay, well now if you win one project, that's good. You might have that workforce available. But if you win 5 projects, it's kind of like a holy shit moment. Where are we going to find
Yeah.
all these people? Having that collaboration about, all right, what's out there, what's needed, what do we need to do, and being able to make it so it is sustainable as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a hard task, isn't it? Because I'm sure that governments and network operators all probably see those problems and probably want the same solutions that gives that sort of stability looking forward. But it's whether we'll ever get there, I don't know. Yeah, so I think we'll continue to see those challenges into the future.
Yeah, it's a worthy point because this is what causes a lot of upheaval and issues within the industry when people are being awarded contracts. And then if there's multiple being awarded contracts and they're all trying to come from the same pool of workers and resources, how do you actually then get the projects done when, back to your original point, you've got that, you're on that strict time frame of when it's got to be delivered, and that
Yeah,
doesn't change. So
no, that's right, and you're right. There is a finite pool of resources we can draw upon, and that demand for those resources is just increasing day by day as these bigger projects come along.
absolutely. No, that's awesome. So I would just like to hear, have you got any closing, I call it closing words of wisdom, or, anything that you see would be valuable to help share with people about, whether that's industry or an individual, a FIFO worker, even a company as a subcontractor, any of that, that might be something that's beneficial for them to kind of grasp or understand, or what they could do to help make it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think, well, my closing words of wisdom, probably just to touch on what I said before about FIFO work for people who are considering it. Like it is a very good opportunity to do that. Again, I sort of talked about financial, but also from a work point of view, it is rewarding to be in that close group environment and to see those achievements. And I guess the nature of people and their attitude to work is changing a little bit. And as I said before, there's a lot more focus for everyone now on their work-life balance. So I think as managers and employers, we need to sort of focus on trying to embrace that and facilitate that as much as we can. But it is difficult. But try to have empathy for when people are struggling, and really just support them as much as you can.
And it's kind of creating that supportive environment as well, which is
Yeah.
vital, because the thing is that construction is not an easy industry as it is when you've got the time pressures and the cost pressures and all of that when you get handed that project. And
Yeah.
then if you're working away and then life still goes on at home and you've still got those things to deal with as well. And then you're in an environment where you're not feeling supported. It's just this boiling pot, really. So
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
if we can create these more supportive environments for people, it definitely will help make a difference, I believe, as well. So
Yep. I agree completely. Yep.
awesome. Okay. That's great. Thank you so much, Greg. It's been
You're
awesome
welcome.
to have you with us. And yeah, we look forward to hearing what Zinfra does moving forward as well.
Yep. No worries. Thank you. Thank you for your time and the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. I hope this conversation gave you something that you can take with you, whether it be a little bit of insight, inspiration, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone. If it resonated with you, please share because we're better when we help build each other up. And remember that your experience, your story, and your journey, it all matters more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected, and never forget you are epic.